Hey YouTube, Sebastian here, Veg City. Hope you're all doing good. Been a little bit of a long day here in the store. I've been working a little bit harder than the other days. It's crunch time, if I can say, almost 7 o'clock. The date is we are the 20th of January, Thursday 20th of January. Haven't given an update in a few days. Things have been a little bit quiet in the store. I've had to do a few adjustments left and right. My aquaponics, let's start with the aquaponics side. Everything is okay on the aquaponics side. Things are moving along. It's not a problem. So what I'm going to do, let me show you guys, and I'll be doing the talking behind the video. Enjoy. So like explained, on the aquaponics side, things are all right. I've been doing a little bit of movement here and there. On the previous videos, I'd moved all the strawberries to their new bed. They are doing okay. They are still a long way to go. But in all fairness, my aquaponic is not at 100% where I would like it to be. I am pretty much short of about, I would say, a good 15 fish, 20 fish per tank. Each of my tanks are averaging about 500, just over 500 liters. So I can have quite a lot of fish in each of the tank, average of about 25 to 30 fish per tank. They are growing good, they're doing fine. I'm feeding them twice a day. I'm not overfeeding my fish. I'm playing with the feed a little bit more, a little bit less. It's all a balance between overfeeding the fish and overfeeding the tank, which is what we call OF in normal aquarist terminology, which is overfeeding of the fish. So it has to be a balance between too much or too little. The reason why is that in aquaponics, obviously, the amount that you feed your fish is the amount that they produce waste. So I know that waste is only a portion of what it's all about. It's a mixture between the waste and obviously when fish are breathing through to the gills. So it's a whole mixture. It's not, a lot of the people actually think it's all about the fish poop. Not really. Fish poop needs to be filtered. It needs to be removed. So obviously the waste that there is in the bottom of the tanks, from time to time, it's the same as having a normal fish tank. You need to clean out the tank. You need to do the whole job of sucking everything out and obviously throwing it away, putting new water. I average about between 10 and 20% water changes. It all depends on how much waste is at the bottom. So far I've been doing about 10-15% water changes. This week I did a little bit of a bigger one, and that's obviously where the water change happened. So on a 500 liter tanks, I'm obviously changing anything between 50 to 75 liters of water, which is not a lot. From then onwards, the strawberries are doing good. I've got two types of strawberries in here. The bigger ones are the Rugans strawberries. They are doing absolutely good. They're growing nicely. It's obviously a slow process with the strawberries, but they've got good roots. They're starting to come along. The other ones, which are my French strawberries, the Temptation strawberries, they are a little bit smaller. They're taking their time, but I suppose once I start getting strawberries on those, I will harvest the fruit of my hard work. All right, moving on to the tomatoes. Seem to be having some problem with my, there we go. Moving on to the tomatoes. They are doing quite fine. No problem on this side. All is good. So very happy with them. And this week I've decided to up my lighting to longer hours. So my lights are on now for 16 hours a day. I could up them a little bit. I've got my timers, but so far I've tried to up them up to 16 hours. And within a few days, straight away, I started getting some flowers. So a lot of people have been asking, that was more towards the strawberries. But one thing that I do every now and then, whenever I walk past them, I give them a little bit of a shake. I talk to my plants, make sure everything stays good. I give them a little bit of a spray once, twice a day. I give them a little bit of extra water through to the top. But soon I'll be stopping with this as the root systems are starting to get beautiful in there. So no worries on all the roots. Those are growing no problem. Hopefully they will not clog up the system eventually, but when we get there, we get there. If they become too long, I can always cut them a little bit down, but I don't think it will be a problem. My water flow is not a very strong water flow, and so far so good. But again, I was so excited the one morning when I walked in and I saw this. So just to give you guys a little bit of understanding on the height of the plant, I'm not a very tall guy. I'm at about 179, 180, and they are quite tall. They're getting a lot taller than me. So yes, they are not directly on the floor. So the height of them is just at over 1 meter. I've installed some extra cables for support, and as they're growing, I obviously move them. So that side on the aquaponic is doing very well. I have received more seeds during the week that I have ordered through to my non-GMO seed supplier in Sweden, and I've already started to do some planting. We'll get to the planting of what I've done today in a second, but in the holes that are still open, I'll be planting other plants in here. I've ordered some Bolivian chilies, and they are quite beautiful. So Bolivian chilies and some peppers, but those are your long peppers. In Swedish they call your speck paprika. So I'll be planting all of those during the week as well, most probably tomorrow morning. Moving on to the hydroponic side. So on the hydroponic side, what I have done, as you guys can see, is been a lot of work that's been done. A lot of people think this is dirty, but the water is actually extremely clear. This is only the old dirt from the clay balls that I had into the system. Eventually I'll have to remove it, but as the time goes, I don't have much of a choice currently. I don't have the correct equipment to remove all of this as yet, as well as I'll have to dismount every single one of them, and I'll have to move them all around, and currently I do not have the luxury of the time to do such things. So let me explain what has been happening. I used to have them full of clay balls. I've decided to remove all of them. The reason why is I'm going to be planting some lettuce. So I have moved all my lights accordingly on top of every single bed. The luminous, which will be on top of the polystyrene itself, will be at about 2,500 luminous on top of the bed, which has been good for every single other plant. So the luminous will be good. So I'll be planting my salads on floating trays. So this technique is called more deep water cultivation. So it is not very deep. I've got about 13 centimeters of water in each of the tanks, and each tanks obviously being your IBC tanks are 1 meter 20 by 1 meter, but the inside on the tanks themselves is at about 1 meter 10 by 90 odd. So I've cut everything accordingly. I've got a center hole in the middle well, a bit more to the side, and that will allow the water to go back into the underneath tank, the water being supplied by the pump. So each of my trays will be able to hold 120 lettuces. So I've got 5 trays, five tanks. So in total, I'll be having 630 lettuces at a time. So today was a very fun day. Was a lot of planting that happened into my homemade nursery workroom. But I've actually been stupid. So to the guys that are watching from South Africa, to the other farm in a few kilometers away from me, also South Africans, Wynand and his wife. Yeah, the term has been I've been a poople, because I'm actually been sitting with a cold room, a walking cold room, which I've had switched off the whole time, which could have been the perfect room for my grow room. So it actually has a thermostat on the inside. So my temperature inside, if we are trying to zoom into this, struggling a little bit on the zoom, but in any case, temperature in here is at about 30 degrees. I've installed one of my grow lights on the inside, and it's actually a nice airtight room, which is good. So I've put all my grow trays in here. So this is my French chive that I've planted, the ciboulette, and those are my parsley. So those were previously done, and they were before they were inside the store on top of the beds themselves, and I just wasn't happy with the growth I was getting. So new week, new start, everything. I've planted today exactly 600 lettuces. So each of my trays are 150. So I've got 4 trays, so that's 600 lettuces that I've planted today, and the other stuff. So first night, let's see how it's gonna go. I'm gonna keep the light on overnight, because it does keep the temperature in the walking room nice. And the best part is that it closes nice and airtight. So the plan is going to be to have all of them on the floating raft. At the beginning, I was actually thinking of actually planting them first. So doing 1 tray at a time and moving them along, so I could have a 5-week cycle. But what I'll be doing is I'll be planting 4 trays at a time, so 600, 630 plus minus seeds at a time, to get my seedlings. Hopefully within a week within the walking room, that should be all right. And from then onwards, I can plant them directly within the system. So my aim is to be able to harvest the 5 basins once a month. That's the way the store is. That's what I have to work with. So I could work on 2 trays at a time, but let me try with all 5 trays at once first. It gives me about 630, 600 odd lettuce. So if I can sell them all at once, I sell them all at once. If the way the store is going to work, that once a month is going to be like a fresh market, fresh produce market, so be it. As the time goes, depending on how the produce are going, if I see that 600 is too much, I'll be planting 200 at a time. Plant 200 at a time, move them 200 lettuce on a weekly base. But let's see how we go. If everything goes to plan and I plant everything correctly within the first month, if I plant my 600 once off and I'm happy with it at the beginning, then the following week, so if everything comes up correctly in the fridge, then next week I'll be planting another 600 and another 600 and so on. So it's going to take about 4 weeks for me to build up a rotation stock, and hopefully that works out good. Going to the wall itself, On this side here, I still have my strawberries. So I've tried two different techniques, the one technique being on the wall and the other technique being on the aquaponic. So the hydroponic side, what I've done is I now have 3 individual systems. So I've got the 2 front tanks that are running on the hand pump. Then I've cut off the piping and I've decided to run those 2 tanks on themselves. And this tank here is then the one that is feeding the whole wall for the hydroponic. So there'll be a little less nutrients within this one. I don't want to overfeed the water with nutrients. That's not my aim to, well, it's good to get growth, but you don't want to over fertilize your produce neither. So I've added a little bit more nutrients. Currently on this tank here, I've got about 400 liters, and my 400 liters requires about 50 milliliters of fertilizer, and that can be on a weekly basis, every second week odd. But I think once a week is a good thing. They say normally everything from 7 to 10 days, but your plants will talk to you. You'll learn that a little bit too much might give them a little bit of a fright, a little bit too little, not enough growth. So let's see how we go on all of this, and we take it from here.